Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. Welcome back to VALORANT News and a major day in the VCT. Yesterday some crucial games in terms of seeding for the playoffs, even qualification for the playoffs at that. TSM versus the Gar was probably the most interesting series of the day. Subroza with an interesting explanation to why they fell short in this particular matchup. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Really upset the channel. Thank you very much indeed for doing that. Great support recently. Do really appreciate it. First of all, this and Will Might I thought was kind of funny here. Top 10 VALORANT players of all time. Pretty sure this list is practically undisputed. But well, here we go first of all from the Gambit side, or as they're now known, M3C, Masters 3 champions. There's some big questions going on really in general around it as Counter-Strike Valorant, whether these guys will be able to get the visas they need, right, to play in some of these online tournaments or well, of course, LAN tournaments as time progresses, and just will continue playing at the level that they have been, right? And it's kind of that entire region has been in a bit of a mess, understandably, and then it's kind of as expected at Masters that the European region wasn't quite as strong as maybe OpTic showed out to be, and Loud, for example, from South America, from Brazil in the grand finals. But maybe Gambit, or former Gambit, as Shader still calls himself Gambit right here, are making something happen, right? Boot camp time, he says, and Nat was kind of flying out to some sort of boot camp. So it seemed like M3C are trying to get some sort of boot camp going ahead of Masters 2, where I guess they're pretty confident they can qualify and get back to the form they were in before. So thought that was rather interesting, because hopefully this team can stick together and get back to where they kind of were before. But I think it's going to be far from easy to get that done. This also from Leaf, I definitely wanted to mention. I was going to talk about this yesterday, but I thought it was rather interesting that we can't not talk about it. The big talking point really has been about the whole TenZ buyout, right? And the amount of money that he was going to get cost to get bought out from Sentinels and Cloud9, all this type of stuff. That effectively a lot of other organizations, tier 2 organizations, are locking at players in that they think could be the next TenZ or whatever in very high tier contracts with a lot of money to buy them out, and effectively they just get stuck down there. So as Leaf kind of says from Cloud9, people acting like the tier 2 scene isn't already horrible, because once you get good enough for tier 1, you're put into contract hostage, and orgs ask for 1 million for a tier 2 player, right? That's kind of the idea that some of these organizations, I think Saw Gaming or whatever they're called, was kind of embroiled in a bit of controversy about this, that some of their players that were kind of wanted to get picked up to better teams, they were like, look, we're not going to sell him unless you pay us $1 million effectively, and locking these guys into crazy contracts with crazy buyouts that effectively holds these guys hostage to the point where they can't kind of move onwards from that organization. You've got to have a fair balance where the organization can actually profit, right, and benefit from scouting a good player that becomes good enough for tier 1, but at the same time you don't want to screw the player over, right? And as kind of Leaf goes on to say, yeah, for the franchise league, but some of these players missed out on potential life-changing opportunities because of org's greediness and wanting a franchise player. And Nerf discussing that there should be some restrictions going forward on buyout prices relative to players' salary, right, which right now doesn't seem to be the case. So interesting discussion, I thought, nonetheless, but definitely shows that kind of second tier in the Valorant scene in North America isn't necessarily as good as it could be, or as kind of well-formed as it could be. I mean, yesterday, of course, we talked about the franchise partnership thing that's going to go on, and maybe there's going to be far less teams than we expected there to be, which can't be a good thing necessarily, but it might get rid of organizations doing stuff like this, at least in terms of the professional side. Wanted to mention this just before we get into the games. Of course, FaZe has come in recently as kind of an initiator. Just looking at the other initiators, we've got Sova, KO, Breach, Sky, and FaZe. And at Reykjavik, we saw exactly this at Stage 1 Masters, right? So Sova was most picked, about a third of the time. Breach, Sky, and of course KO as it was, pretty similar pick rates actually. Now, it's actually not changed that much. Like, KO hasn't changed much. Like, we see that, of course, actually 21% Breach is exactly the same, and really Sova hasn't gone down in usage that much, even though he has been nerfed to some degree. Fade is here at 13%, pretty much the same as Sky. So Sky is definitely reduced in utility, it seems. Fade is becoming more relevant, and she is starting to get picked a little bit more often. I don't think she'll ever become exactly what Chamber is right now, but still, her kind of slice of the pie is growing as teams learn how to use her a little bit more effectively. Now, we've got to talk about the games here from last night. So firstly, EMEA, just quickly on this, because OG London United did a incredible job against G2. This was a massive series for both teams. G2, of course, was sitting at 1-1 at this point. They needed this victory really against OG London to secure their spot in the winners bracket. That is now far from guaranteed. OG take this series. They're up 1-0 at this point. They close it out as well, and then we'll see the kind of the standings here in a second. The other series was Liquid versus Guild. I think this one actually might have gone on first, and this is one I was really excited for. Soulcast absolutely destroys this poor lad right here on the fade. But at this point, Guild are up 1-0, Team Liquid are up 9-4, but all of a sudden things start to turn around. I don't know if this was actually slightly earlier right here, but Guild end up taking this series, right? I mean, I think both of these series were 3 mappers. This series especially was a bit of an epic. The first one was kind of surprising how dominant every single map was of the series one way or another. But Guild's now moved to 3-0, Liquid are 2-1, so both of those teams are looking okay. But M3 champions, as we just said with the bootcamp, they still should be favourites here, M3C, to get out of this group, because only top 3 do. Group A, though, is absolutely stacked, to be honest. And now you've got FPX at 1-1, Ascendant and Fnatic both undefeated, although I believe they play each other tomorrow or tonight. We'll look at the matches here in a second. But G2 1-2 with OG London puts them in a very compromised position to even make it out of the groups, right? And if they can't make the playoffs, that's not good for G2 at all. And it's a very likely possibility at the moment that that actually happens. And yes, tonight Ascend versus Fnatic. So one of these teams will finally lose, but one of these teams will also go 3-0 to the point where they're pretty much untouchable for playoffs qualification. Very much intrigued to your perspective on that one. We've got to dive into the North American side then. So Leaf says a couple of days ago now, the guard is back, ladies and gentlemen. Basically saying that in scrims, they were finally looking good, right? We kind of saw the first week or so, first couple of weeks of the main event that, they were just nowhere near where they were in Stage 1. Of course, the Stage 1 North American Playoffs champions, they took down OpTic in that crazy 5-map series. So far, this time, been looking at a very different story. In fairness, though, it must be said, they've kind of been changing around their roles a little bit, and honestly, when Sire players back on the Jets, things start to happen. So the guard come into this series against TSM, and TSM have looked really good, I thought, as of late, and the guard were certainly, I think, underdogs theoretically coming into this series. TSM looked rather good, and the guards come in here after having 2 pretty difficult defeats, and really this would have been a massive victory for TSM right there, of course, looking to qualify for the playoffs, and it's slightly different in North America and EMEA, as in, in EMEA, the top 3 teams out of the 6 go to the playoffs. In North America, the top 4 teams go, but the team in the number 1 seed gets a bye in the winners bracket, and the team with the number 4 seed starts in losers. So if you're starting in losers and you're the 4th seed in your group, you have a very limited chance of actually getting all the way through anyway, and getting to Masters and winning the tournament. But yeah, finally the star players on the guard started to show up. Trent had a good series, of course. There was all that talk, kind of banter really, about the idea that, Trent into the music, the whole music thing happened, if you guys remember, when he went to the Masters event, and they didn't allow him to play music while he was on main stage, and effectively since then, he doesn't seem to necessarily have been the same player that he was before. But maybe in these online games, he's allowed to do that again. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't, not really sure, but it seems to enjoy listening to music during the games, which I find kind of crazy, but he's not allowed to do that on LAN. So I think probably if I was the guards coach, I'd be like, look, let's just make sure that you can learn how to play without music in the background, so that when it comes to a LAN environment, you're all good to go. But it was a very close forward game at this point. I mean, Net had a massive 4K to bring them kind of back into the fray here. Actually, the guards, they go 5-5, and then it was really close from TSM on their defensive side. They won a crucial round here to get back to 9-8, but then the guard turned up on their offense, and they end up closing out this map 13-10. So Haven goes their way, a dominant final round in their favor as well, and then game 2 follows a similar story. Icebox was frankly not particularly close. The guard really didn't look particularly in danger here in another massive round from Trent, right? I mean, this guy, when he's on form, is absolutely fantastic on the Sova. And yeah, the TSM guys really seem nowhere near the level that they've been performing at as of late. Of course, they've got the whole bootcamp thing going on. They've been trying to do their best to become one of the best teams in North America, kind of where they were. And of course, Sentinels, TSM, all this talk about where they were kind of at the start of Valorant, and now it's rather a different story. It goes 11-7 at this point in favor of the guard on their defensive side, and eventually they close out the game. And this honestly was a beautiful clip also from Sire Player, right? This guy, when he's on the jet, is just something else to enjoy. The thing is, the last few days, they've been trying him out on the chamber and various different, I mean, look at that flick, first of all. He gets actually 4 kills right here. And I mean, honestly, this guy is so much fun to watch when he's on the jet. When he's kind of got the freedom to play as he would like to, then he's just so difficult to stop and so difficult to deal with. That first flick was nice. The second kill as well was pretty good. Gets the final kill here as well. Of course, can't win the round, but it's still in the advantage, in the ascendancy at this point, and did some economy damage. As Trent says, GG's TSM, we are back. A little rough on some scenarios that we'll iron out, but good game entirely. So all of a sudden, they've given themselves a decent chance indeed to qualify for the winners bracket if they continue as they are. Subroza kind of explains their defeat from their perspective. Our communication and rotation on CZ have to get better. Played bad, sorry about that one. So yeah, I do wonder if it was a bit of an off day for the TSM guys. I thought that the guard looked a lot better in kind of the roles they were trying out here, which of course you'd probably expect to be better than they were before. But TSM, after looking so promising, bit of an off day here up against the guard. A team that if they'd have beaten, they'd have been in prime position, right, to actually qualify for the playoffs. Now that it's looking very much in jeopardy, we'll see this kind of standings here in a couple of minutes time. The overall series stats are like this. Of course, Icebox and Haven, frankly, rather dominant in their favor, but it was interesting the fact that no chamber was used at all by the guard in this series, and they said, look, Sire, look, get back on the jet. That's where you belong. And that's, of course, what led them to the success, right? So we have Corey on the chamber on the other side. It was very different, actually, attention here, really, with 7. I mean, he's using the neon. We've got Omen on the GMT side as well. So the very different compositions, but it seemed to work out for the guard today. Now, this series was another really important one here for Luminosity Gaming, right? They come into this series with a fantastic chance to get through to the winners bracket. And I mean, look at this wall back here from Com. That was absolutely out of control. But EG come out swinging in this series, right? And I thought they've looked pretty good for quite some time now. But LG, I thought, still should be there or thereabouts in this series. It was kind of tough to call for me between the two of them. But EG honestly came up with the fire. That wallbang from Com was absolutely ridiculous as well. And finally, they seem to kind of be reaching maybe some of their potential right here. It could have been 13-4 here if B-Dog didn't go absolutely crazy. And that is kind of the thing of what we've seen so far from Luminosity is that they kind of need B-Dog to absolutely take over the game if they want to win consistently. But yeah, B-Dog gets the job done right here. This nice kill at the end over to Boostio, but he was doing good work on the chamber as well, especially when we got into this game here on the binds, where he has a monster round actually with the chamber ultimate in hand to go up 8-2. And honestly, Luminosity Gaming just got dominated this series. And honestly, like, I know I talk about round count a fair bit, and the round differential isn't maybe the most crucial thing in the world, because I think like the first tiebreaker is map differential, but I think it can come down to round count potentially. Of course, the guard weren't looking so good on that front recently, and LG lost a lot of rounds right here to EG, and they put themselves in a nice position. But a 2-0 is really what you want to be going for in terms of kind of map count differential tiebreakers that could happen at some point or another. And yeah, look at poor Moose stuck in this corner right here, tries to get wallbanked. Boostio comes out and just quick scopes in it for the rest of the round. And obviously after their 2-0 victory, thought this is interesting for Matt Liu as well, the fact that Evil Geniuses today have it, they planted in 14 out of 15 attacking rounds. That's honestly insane, despite LG being the third best team at plant denial. So they've obviously been working an awful lot on their offensive strategies here, because they plant the spike 86% of the rounds that they're attacking, which is way above the average of about 68% for most teams, which is honestly kind of incredible, and definitely a team to watch out for as time progresses as well. As Com says, best stop sleeping on us, right? Clean 2-0 against Luminosity, 2-1 in groups as well. So they're looking rather good right now. Of course, they beat, I think, they beat Sentinels last time out, and I'm pretty sure Luminosity also beat Sentinels as well. So things that don't get easier for them. But yeah, Boostio on the chamber. Gamer had another great series. This guy's really, really good indeed. And B-Dog couldn't quite carry the job today, and Tig has a pretty rough one. Let's talk about the final series standings as they kind of look right now in that region then. As we can see, these are the groups today. Some massive games also going on this evening. 100 Thieves TSM is certainly one of them. We'll see that too in a second. But Guard all of a sudden are 1-2. TSM now are 1-2. And all of a sudden it might actually be the Guard that are kind of favourites to get the 4th seed here, as opposed to TSM in this group. So TSM obviously have a pretty difficult time, and Sentinels on the other side, they're not looking pretty either. They've got a massive game coming up this evening against none other than OpTic Gaming, but Luminosity kind of fall just short of Evil Geniuses, now 2-1. So this group is already getting insane, and that is Group A. And then yes, the standings or the matches for tonight look like this. Sentinels play OpTic. They lost to OpTic, I'm pretty sure, last time out as well during stage 1. And it's going to be even harder this time to beat them, right? So let's see what happens here. If Sentinels win a map in this series, I'll be pretty impressed. But very much intrigued to your thoughts and all this stuff in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, hit the like button. Tell us your YouTube god, this is a good video. I just like you should see it as well. And help grow the competitive Valorant community. Thank you for watching as always. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.